You apologized to a vending machine today, not to a person, to a machine, for taking too long deciding between the pretzels and the granola bar. Most of us do this constantly. We apologize to inanimate objects, to strangers we barely touched, to the air itself, and then we walk past our own exhaustion without a single word of comfort. We'll say sorry to a chair we bumped into, and never once say, "That's enough for today," to ourselves. I noticed this in my own life a long time ago, how easy it is to be gracious to a stranger and merciless to the one person you live inside of every day for your whole life. And in my office, I hear versions of this same thing on repeat. People who can forgive a friend instantly for forgetting to call, and then spend 3 days punishing themselves for forgetting to reply to one email. So today isn't about a 5-year plan for self-love. It's not about morning routines or vision boards or becoming a different person by Tuesday. It's about 7 small, almost embarrassingly ordinary things you could start doing in the next 10 minutes that quietly change how you treat yourself. Welcome to Breathe and Begin. I'm Sarah, a psychologist, a mother of 2 who has made her share of mistakes, and someone who used to think kindness toward myself was something you earned after you'd fixed everything else first. I don't think that anymore, and by the end of this, I hope you don't either. If any of this sounds like your life, stay a minute. Let's talk about the tiny stuff, because the tiny stuff, it turns out, is not tiny at all. Someone I worked with, I'll call her Marin, though that's not her name, used to walk into my office and before she'd even taken her coat off say, "Sorry, I know this is probably nothing." Every single week. "Sorry, I know this is probably nothing." She wasn't apologizing for taking up space in the room. She was apologizing for existing in it. And most of us have a version of that sentence running quietly under everything we do. A pre-apology for having needs at all. The first tiny way to be kinder to yourself is to catch that sentence before it leaves your mouth. Not to banish it forever, that's not how minds work, but to notice it. "Sorry, this is probably nothing," is worth saying out loud to yourself once, on purpose, and then asking, would I say this to someone I loved? If a friend told you they were tired, would your first instinct be to tell them it's probably nothing? Probably not. So why is it your first instinct with you? Here's a small, almost silly image, but stay with me. A client of mine, a man in his 50s, practical, not big on emotional language, told me once that he'd started keeping a full glass of water on his desk, not because a doctor told him to, because he noticed that on his worst days, the glass stayed full from 9 in the morning until 5 at night. He was so far from himself that he forgot his own body needed water. That glass became, for him, a strange little instrument. If it was still full by noon, that told him something. Not "you're failing," just "you've left the building, come back." The second tiny way to be kinder to yourself is this. Pick one small physical signal, water, a stretch, stepping outside for 60 seconds, and let it be a check-in, not a chore. You are not trying to optimize your hydration. You're trying to remember you have a body, and that the body is allowed to be tended to before it's in crisis. I trained as a physicist before I trained as a psychologist, a strange path, I know. And one thing physics teaches you is that a system behaves differently depending on where you're standing when you observe it. Human beings are exactly like that. We are far more accurate, far more generous, far more reasonable when we're describing someone else's pain than when we're describing our own. Try this. Next time you catch yourself thinking something brutal about yourself, "I'm so stupid, I always ruin things, what is wrong with me?" Pause and imagine someone you love said the exact same sentence to you about themselves in the exact same tone. What would you say back? You wouldn't agree with them. You'd probably reach for their hand. The third tiny way to be kinder to yourself is to borrow that voice. Not fake positivity, actual, plain, unglamorous compassion. The kind you already have and already give away for free to everyone but yourself. Redirect it, just once today. See what happens. And look, this one might sting a little, so I'll say it gently. No, wait. Let me say it warmly instead. A lot of us walk around composing a defense for decisions no one asked us to defend, why we left early, why we said no, why we're still not over it, whatever it is. We rehearse justifications for an invisible jury that most of the time isn't even watching.
I once had a client tell me she'd spent an entire drive home composing an explanation for why she hadn't texted her sister back in 4 days. Her sister never asked. The trial was happening entirely in her own head, and she was losing it every time. The fourth tiny way to be kinder to yourself is to notice when you're building a defense case for something no one has accused you of. You don't owe the imaginary jury a closing statement. You're allowed to simply live your Tuesday without a verdict. There's a pattern I see constantly, and it goes like this. Someone accomplishes something, finishes a hard conversation, gets through a rough week, cooks an actual dinner instead of cereal over the sink, and instead of letting that count, they immediately reach for the next thing. Yeah, but I should also. The mind has a way of erasing the win the second it happens.
So, fifth tiny way. When you do something even slightly hard, let it be the whole thing for 30 seconds before your brain starts adding conditions. You went for the walk. That's the sentence. Not, you went for the walk, but it was short. Just, you went for the walk. Let the sentence end where it actually ends. People-pleasing gets talked about so much that it's almost become a cliché, and I think that's done it a disservice because underneath the cliché is something very real and very exhausting. The belief that a no is only acceptable if it comes with a full legal brief attached.
I had a client once rehearse a 3-paragraph text message to decline a dinner invite from a coworker she barely knew. 3 paragraphs for a dinner she was allowed to simply not want to attend. Here's the truth, plainly. No, I can't make it, but thank you for thinking of me, is a complete sentence. It doesn't need supporting evidence. The sixth tiny way to be kinder to yourself is to let your no be short. You are not on trial. You do not need to win the case for your own boundaries.
There's almost always one small thing, reading a chapter, sitting outside with coffee, calling a friend just to hear their voice, that a person keeps meaning to get to once things calm down. And things rarely calm down on schedule. Life doesn't hand out a clean stretch of nothing. You have to take the 10 minutes while everything is still a little on fire. This is the 7th one, and maybe the hardest, because it isn't really about the 10 minutes. It's about believing you're allowed to have them before you've earned them through exhaustion. You don't have to collapse first to deserve rest. The 10 minutes are not a reward for suffering enough. They're just yours. Take them today, not after some invisible finish line. I want to pause here and tell you something clinically true, without any jargon. Grand gestures of self-improvement tend to fail not because people lack willpower, but because they're aimed at a version of you that doesn't exist yet. A total morning routine, a total personality overhaul, it asks the tired, overwhelmed person you are right now to become someone else before being treated with any decency. Tiny kindnesses work differently. They don't ask you to transform. They ask you to notice, for 10 seconds, for 1 sentence, for 1 glass of water, that the person living your life today is worth a small amount of gentleness right now, exactly as they are. That's not a lesser form of self-care. It might actually be the realest form there is. My daughter doesn't remember the years I was efficient. She remembers the Tuesday I sat on the kitchen floor with her and let the dishes wait. Small moments are what people actually retain, not our grand campaigns of self-optimization, but the soft, ordinary choices we make when no one's grading us. The same is true of the relationship you have with yourself. You won't remember the year you were perfectly disciplined. You'll remember the day you let yourself finish the sentence, "I did enough," without adding a but. That's the version of you worth building, not through a 5-year plan, but through today's 10 small choices. So, back to that vending machine and the apology you didn't need to give it. Here's the sentence I want to leave you with. You don't need a reason to be kind to yourself. Not a bad day, not a diagnosis, not a breakdown, not permission from anyone standing over your shoulder with a clipboard. The kindness doesn't have to be earned through suffering first. It can simply be Tuesday, and you can simply decide. Try one of the 7 today, just one. The water glass, the short no, the 30 seconds where the win gets to be the whole thing. See what it does. If this found you at the right moment, I'd love to know which one you're going to try. Leave it in the comments or just carry it with you quietly, whichever feels more like you. And if you want more of these conversations, staying close to this channel means we get to keep having them. You are allowed to be gentle with yourself before you fixed anything. Start there. Start small. Start today.